to say.
So we are back with another one, ready to talk about this next story arc, episodes 7, 8, and 9 in Andor. And once again, great show. I really like this arc. This might be my favorite arc in the whole show, honestly. This one was a little different. It didn't really end up having that third episode being super action packed, but what this arc did do is use that build up even more because we didn't get that super action packed third episode. You know it's probably going to be the next episode. And one thing that they really do is play with that tension. I think that's the whole theme with every character and whatever's going on with them. There's always that tension. You always feel like something is going to happen to them. And I really enjoy watching it. So we start off in episode 7. We got Cyril's mom still treating him like a kid, and she's kind of hounding him about his outfit and his clothes before a job interview. And then he sees the report about the Aldani robbery on TV. And of course, he's going to connect it to Cassian in his own mind. So that really piques his interest. And we go to the Imperials, and we actually get a cameo from Admiral Yularen. Is he even an admiral? I don't even know what his official title is in this show. If you're a fan of Star Wars, you know who Admiral Yularen is. I think this is kind of a big deal, but it didn't seem like anybody was really talking about it. In A New Hope, he's one of the Imperial officers that we see in the room with Darth Vader when he chokes that guy. Him, there's Admiral Grand Moff Tarkin, and yeah, the rest of them. So he's one of the guys that ended up dying when the Death Star blew up. If you're a fan of the Clone Wars, you will have seen him in most of the episodes. He was the admiral that was with Anakin, the whole time, and and the same voice actor did the like opening narration for every episode of the show. So he was somebody that has been shown a lot in Star Wars. I think he also appeared in Rebels a few times. So this is a person that has appeared in Star Wars a bunch of times and kind of let you know, like, yeah, this is still the same world that has the more famous characters, even though we aren't really dealing with them in this show. So I think that was cool. And it also just showed you how they're trying to crack down on the rebel activity by bringing somebody who's even of higher ranking than all the other officers that we usually see. And now Mon Mothma meets with Luthen, and she's mad about the robbery that he did because, of course, when something like that happens, it just brings more attention from the Empire. But, as we all know, things like this usually don't stay secrets forever when you're dealing with a rebellion. And we do know that eventually people are going to be in open war against the Empire. So this is just like the beginning of that. It starts off with things here and there, and then it eventually grows, and then eventually you're recruiting people to be soldiers. So, this is just that beginning of that. And it makes sense, though, because I think one way to look at this show is almost like an origin of Mon Mothma too, because we're kind of seeing her before she becomes that main leader of the rebellion. So eventually, she's gonna declare herself publicly against the Empire. And then we got Cyril, who's basically interviewing for an office job, and we know he's not that kind of person to sit at a desk all day. His job before was basically like being a police officer. So it's more hands-on, being in the field, dealing with criminals and stopping crime. And we all know he's obsessed with this Cassian thing. So we know that this isn't gonna last for a while. And then we got Vel and Clea meeting on Coruscant, and Vel is told to find and kill Cassian. So this is pretty interesting because Cassian is a loose end for them, right? He's somebody that they brought in to do the robbery, and they know that he's on the run. And if he gets caught, he could potentially give them up. So they look at him like a loose end, and the best way to deal with a loose end is to get rid of it. And then at the same time, Mon Mothma's having issues with accessing her family fortune. So what does she do? She goes to her old childhood friend who happens to be a banker and asks him for help because you don't want the Empire to be poking around your money when you're using it to help a rebel cause, and all it takes is for somebody to go looking. That's just like real life. Next thing you know, somebody's missing a whole bunch of money or they didn't pay taxes, and the government will come after you when they feel like there's something going on. And Cassian finally goes back to Ferrex. He meets Bix, and they have a little argument or whatever. And he's trying to find out who Luthen is, and of course she doesn't know because he's so careful. He probably doesn't tell anybody his name or anything. So, and there was a great scene where we actually get a flashback to the early Empire time, and they were still using the clone troopers. We see the Phase Two clone troopers, but they're not painted in the colors. They're just all white. So we know that this is after the Empire is really taking over, and they're really trying to make their presence known. And it was sad, but something happened, and Cassian's dad, Clem, ends up just being in the wrong place at the wrong time and getting killed for it, even though he didn't even do anything. And we're gonna see that theme kind of come back in a little bit. And we get more live action clone troopers, which is something that the shows have been doing recently. Because in the prequel trilogy they actually didn't even make a single clone trooper suit. They just used CGI for all of them. And when we got those flashbacks in the Book of Boba Fett, they actually used real people in the clone armor. And that was just like in this show. You could tell it was live action people, like real people. And I think that's cool because as a kid, I didn't even realize it. And even now, when you look at the prequels, they still really look good in the CGI department. Well, depending. Phantom Menace, not as much, but like in Attack of the Clones, it's really hard to tell that it's all CGI unless you're really looking. But I think it's cool that they are using real people in the clone armor. And we also see where Cassian gets his name that he was using from. So we know that his dad is named Clem, and he was just kind of using that. So Cassian finally reunites with his mother, and it's kind of funny that the robbery that he was a part of ends up inspiring her to want to be a rebel, and she doesn't want to leave the planet, and it kind of ruins Cassian's plan of just kind of taking her and going somewhere and just living and not really being a part of anything. But she ends up wanting to be a rebel and fight for that cause, even though she's really old and she's even getting sicker by the day. So her health is kind of declining. And she's old, but she still has that fight in her. And she doesn't even know that Cassian did the robbery on Aldani, but that event just inspired her so much to want to help in any way that she can. And she also tells him to stop looking for his sister because everybody on Kenari died. So that whole deal from seems like a long time ago, all those episodes ago, was just a wild goose chase for nothing really. And then in a great scene, see, I really love these Imperial scenes. I really just like seeing the day to day. I know I said that before, but we keep getting great moments. So Supervisor Blevin accuses Miro of breaking the rules. He does this whole thing because this is what goes on. These people are trying to take down other people in the job to advance themselves. So you have almost like a crabs in a barrel mentality where people will kind of push each other down to help advance themselves. And it's kind of crazy because you're supposed to be on the same team, right? Like you're both Imperials supposedly trying to take out rebels, and y'all are fighting each other just as much as you're fighting them. And this is what's going on. And this Blevin versus Miro thing has been a really cool part of the show. And I forgot the guy's name, but like the higher ranking officer guy that's like the leader of them, he took Miro's side and basically told her to keep doing what she was doing. I thought that was a really interesting moment. And then at the end of the episode, Cassian is just kind of doing his thing. He's on vacation, I guess. That's what it looked like. He looked like he was in the Star Wars version of Miami. He's just on this place that looks like a resort with a beach, and there's everybody just sitting there chilling, drinking their drinks, and just kind of having a good time. And he's just walking to the store, and ends up getting harassed by a stormtrooper and arrested and wrongfully charged with a crime that he didn't even do and sentenced to 6 years, which is insane for just being at the wrong place at the wrong time once again. So I think it's moments like this that really inspired Cassian to end up fighting the Empire for real because he had this idea of just doing this one job, getting a boatload of money, and then just going away, right? But then he actually gets affected by the Empire more than once. He sees his father get killed for just being in the wrong place. He didn't even do anything. He didn't fight anybody, and he wasn't even rightfully fighting. He was just trying to mind his own and get killed. And same thing happens to Cassian. He's just walking down the street and then gets arrested and sentenced to 6 years for what? And that's where the episode ends. So that's a crazy way for it to end. And honestly, I did not really expect that. I didn't expect for the main character to go to jail. So now I'm thinking, is he really gonna serve 6 years? I don't even think it's possible because of the time that this show takes place and in relation to Rogue One, but still, I'm like, man, 6 years? That's crazy. So that was episode seven. Another great episode. And episode eight starts off with Lieutenant Muro actually bringing Cyril in for questioning and asking about why he's looking for Cassian and things like that because Cyril was actually putting in like fake requests for information about, fake people trying to get information about Cassian. And Cyril doesn't have anything valuable, so it was just like a waste of time for Miro. But once again, Cyril doesn't let it go. And Miro ends up getting permission from Admiral Yularen to look for Cassian on Ferrix because he'll lead them to Luthen, which they don't know is Luthen. They're just looking for the person who's orchestrating everything. So they're trying to use Cassian to get to Luthen. So this goes back to Luthen wanting to kill Cassian, so there's no connection to him. And now we have the Empire looking for Cassian. So you can say, in a way, Luthen is right, even though it's wrong to kill people that you're working with. And of course, we're rooting for Cassian naturally. I mean, he's the main character of the show. But, things get complicated. Sometimes there's good people on the side that you don't think are good, or maybe not good people, but lesser evil. And then there's bad people on the side that you think that's good. And I'm not saying any of these people in the show are good Imperials. I don't think we've ever seen one of those in this show, but I'm just saying that Luthen is definitely kind of a wild card. We don't really know what his intentions are with anybody. He's very secretive, even though he is on the rebel side. Obviously, we can say that he's not afraid to kill anybody. And Cassian goes to jail, and we could tell that this jail is not like any jail that is at least on planet Earth or even that we've seen in Star Wars. I don't think I've ever seen a jail designed like this in any type of fiction. The floor is able to shock people, so the guards are all walking around with these special boots that are of course immune to it that protect them, and the prison inmates are all barefoot, so they can be shocked at any time. And then already we see that because of this, the guards don't carry any blasters, but one thing that we could tell through the dialogue is that the jail is understaffed, so there's not enough guards to run the jail. And a lot of times these things work just because the inmates choose to allow it, right? So you have a jail that's understaffed and they don't even really carry weapons. So already this is planting the seeds for an escape. I mean, we know an escape is coming, and that's kind of what happens when any main character goes to jail. We know as an audience that there's probably going to be a prison break at some point, unless the movie is just about jail. But even in Shawshank Redemption, the main character escaped and he was in jail for 20 years, but he still escaped at the end. And at this jail, they put the inmates to work, and we see him building this kind of machine, but it's impossible to tell what it is. I don't know if it's a droid or if it's some type of vehicle or something like that. You can't really tell. They're just kind of putting these moving parts together, and I don't even think the inmates themselves know what it is, or maybe the guards don't even know. They just like, look, y'all got to do this work because the Empire says so, and that's what's happening. That's their cycle every day. They just go work for 12 hours, putting these things together, and the winning teams get a little reward, and then the team that comes in last gets shocked at the end of the day. So there's that incentive for everybody to try to work faster to beat everybody so that you don't get shocked. And it's kind of a tough environment because, slave labor, first of all, let's just call it what it is. It's slave labor. And, that's never something that's good in any society. And having it be prison inmates on top of that is just wrong. It's just plain wrong. And this episode is where we first meet Andy Serkis character Kino, and he's an interesting character. He's like the leader of the inmates. So a lot of times these kind of people are almost like second guards in a way, even though they're inmates, but they the ones that really be keeping everybody in line. And a lot of times they could be like a guard's pet or something. Like they just listen to what the guards say no matter what. Sometimes they be kind of kissing up to them and just doing whatever the guards say. And, they're almost like just as much a part of this whole situation as the guards. So, like his character in this show is pretty interesting. And what happens when somebody goes to jail? All the inmates are of course going to ask him about the outside, especially in a place like this where they don't have any type of communication. At least in our jails in America, people could write letters, people could get visits from people and at least talk to people that live on the outside, and they might know a little bit about what's going on in the real world. They be having TVs and stuff. Sometimes they be having phones in there. People in jail be sneaking anything in there. I've seen people in jail with pets and all kind of stuff in jail, getting Pizza Hut and all kind of food. Just being on the internet, you see a lot of crazy stuff. But in this jail, they don't have any communication with the outside world. Your family could think you dead for all they know. If they haven't heard of you for months and years, they don't know what happened. So these people have no communication. So when Cassian gets in there, they're asking about the outside world, and they're asking about this whole political thing that's going on, and do they know about everybody's sentences being doubled and stuff like that? And Cassian doesn't know anything about it. And this is already causing a little tension with the inmates because they're expecting like protests and things like that to be going on about it, and nobody even knows about it. And this jail is probably pretty secretive too. They're on these big buildings that are in the middle of the ocean. That's something I forgot to say earlier. So even if they did somehow escape, it would almost be impossible for them to survive because they would have to swim an insane distance. That's something that we see in jails in real life. They put them in the middle of the water. So, okay, even if you do somehow sneak out of here, can you swim? And they're building something that we don't know about. So everything about this jail is just weird. And one thing that's going on in this jail is the inmates can kind of see other groups of inmates that are really far away, like in the structure, the way the jail is built, and there's like these tunnels with windows, and they can see other inmates far away. And one of the guys is doing sign language, talking to the other guys, and they're trying to get information. So I think that's pretty interesting. And back on Ferrex, we can see Cassian's mom is getting sick and she's getting worse by the day. And we also see that Vel and Cinta are on Ferrex waiting for Cassian. So everybody's kind of going to Ferrex because they know that Cassian is eventually going to go back to see his mom. But they don't even know that Cassian is in jail because, of course, he used a fake name. So they don't have a record of Cassian Andor being in jail. It's just another guy. And then that night in jail, somebody falls on the floor and gets shocked to death because at a certain time, the inmates aren't even supposed to be walking around and stuff. So, during bedtime, they're supposed to be in their cell. And if you walk on the floor at night, you get shocked. And I like how they kind of left it up to the viewer's interpretation whether this guy actually committed suicide or just kind of fell down there by accident. So it's kind of like, it's just rough. It's just sad. Because you would think, yeah, if somebody especially has a really long sentence, they're not going to want to live 10, 20, 30 years in there just doing all that work and they can't even go outside and stuff. So it's perfectly reasonable for somebody to want to just jump on that shop floor and die real quick. But they also said that he might have slipped. So we don't really know. So it's just tragic either way. And you knew that was gonna happen. You can't show us the shock floor and then never use the shock floor. And then we go back to Ferrex. We see one of the people that was helping Bix and Cassian get arrested by stormtroopers, and they're also looking for Bix. Bix tries to run away and she ends up getting arrested. And then we get another big cameo in this episode. So we actually see Luthen meet with Saw Gerrera. So Saw Gerrera is a character that first appeared in the Clone Wars, and he's a really interesting character. And then we see him played in live action by Forrest Whitaker. So he's like an older version of him in Rogue One. So this is about 20 years after the Clone Wars, and we see the live action version of him, and they brought back Forrest Whitaker to play him in Andor. And of course, they're both talking about Aldani, and Luthen's like playing with him. He's like asking him if it was him, and Saul is of course denying it because I mean it really wasn't him. We know it was Luthen, and Luthen's denying it, but it was just a good scene. And Luthen was trying to get something from Saul Guerrera and work together, but we know that Saul is a do your own thing kind of guy. He never really worked with the rest of the rebellion. He just kind of did his own thing, and the rest of the rebellion kind of ended up looking at him as like a crazy terrorist type of guy. And in the end, they didn't really want to work with him anyway because they felt that his methods were always too much. But Luthen obviously don't feel that way. And we know based on what we've seen from Luthen already, that Luthen is willing to do anything. So him and Saul are two peas in a pod. So I think they would actually be a good team if they could work together. But Saul turns him down. He doesn't buy what he's selling. And that's really it for episode 8. That's another one where we're just getting closer and closer with that build up. I'm really enjoying all these characters, this web of characters, and the many story arcs within the larger arc of what Cassian is doing. So I just think, once again, this show has just been firing on all cylinders. And then in episode 9, we see that Bix has been captured and she's about to get interrogated by Lieutenant Miro, and then they pull out this new device that they've been trying out that really tortures people, and it'll either kill you or the person is gonna give up the information that they have. And then in the jail, we see Cassian doing something. He's like sawing some kind of pipe in the wall. So we already see that they're planning an escape. We see him and this other guy. They're like talking about the guards' movements and what kind of equipment they got, and they're trying to figure out if there's certain floors that can or can't shock you and stuff like that. So my guess is that whatever Cassian was trying to cut is some kind of wire that's gonna shut off the floor, so that if they try to shock everybody on the floor, it won't work. And there's this old guy in Cassian's group in the jail that he's working with, and he's clearly not well. Like he shouldn't even be working. And that's the crazy part about it too. They will work you to death. A jail using slave labor will work a person to death. They don't care if you got any type of health issue, if you got two arms and two legs, they probably don't even care if you got one arm or anything. If you could somehow do work in any capacity, they will put you to work. And they don't care if you die doing it. Like this guy definitely should have been in a hospital, and he was basically forced to work because if he couldn't work, they probably would have killed him anyway. So everybody's like trying to hold him up, and he can't even stand. And then once again, Mon Mothma is presenting a bill at the Senate, and everybody just gets up and leaves while she's talking. Like I feel bad. It's like, cause you know how the Senate room is in Star Wars, and there's all those like floating seats and stuff, and then you just see all the lights turned off, like all over the place. That just signals that nobody is there. So you just see everybody getting up and leaving while she's talking, cause nobody cares about her humanitarian stuff that she's doing. And it's even sadder that nobody cares about the humanitarian stuff she's doing. Like, if people did, she probably wouldn't have even became a rebel if she could do everything through the politics route. And then the jail is, of course, just getting more and more restless. There's rumors of something that happened in another spot in the jail, and Kino is trying to keep everybody in line. He's just really trying to calm everybody down. You could tell that he's the type of person that he doesn't want any type of riots or anything to happen that's gonna ruin his chances of getting out because he doesn't have that long to get out. And Cassian is trying to get information from him because once again, we know if you're the leader of the rest of the inmates, you're gonna have a little information about what's really going on in the jail. And Cassian's constantly asking him for the information, and he's asking him how many guards on each level and things like that. And Kino's not telling him. He just tells him to keep his head down and do what he's supposed to do until he gets out. But we all know that there's something that's wrong with this place. Because first we know that the place is understaffed, and then we finding out that something happened to inmates somewhere in the jail. We don't really know what happened. And this is kind of a thing that happens when you have a place that's understaffed, it even causes the guards to behave erratically because they know that they don't really have the power. They know that if the inmates wanted to, they could probably escape or cause a riot and kill them. And because they know that if they were in a straight up fight, that they don't have the numbers advantage, even if they did have enough people to run the jail. But now that they're understaffed, they're kind of in panic mode. So it's just a recipe for disaster. And then the Imperial officers, of course, being the detectives that they are, they find the connection between Cassian and Aldani, and they know that his mother's on Ferrix, and they just use her as bait. So the Empire is already occupying that planet. So all they got to do is just wait. And the rumors about the jail are that an entire level of people got killed. And once again, this is going back to the guards not really doing what they're supposed to do because when they are understaffed, they kind of gotta show that they're still in power and they will do anything to show it, even if they're not. So they killed an entire level of people to keep the larger prison in order. And of course, when the inmates hear this, they start getting restless and tense because they're wondering they're next. And then we're back to Cyril. His mother is still treating him like he's a child. She's looking through his stuff, and we get a little funny conversation. He's like, "I know you're snooping on me. This guy's a grown man, a grown working man, and his mother's like looking through his stuff. I mean, and parents shouldn't even really be doing that to kids, but that's a different conversation." And it's funny because her whole demeanor changes when he tells her that he was promoted. And I don't even think he was promoted because they were talking before and she said something about him going to work early and leaving late. And he, kind of pulled that out like, yeah, I've been promoted, so I got to spend more time at work. We know you haven't been promoted. You just using that extra time to try to find Cassian. You still got that same office job, and then you leaving the house early to try to find Cassian, and you staying out late to try to find Cassian. And this man ends up stalking Lieutenant Miro because he felt like she is his ticket to get him back in. And of course she turns him away because she's like, now you just creeping me out. Like you just being weird at this point. And then Mom Mothma's friend finally comes back with an idea to help her with her money problems. And of course, it's not a great one. Well, it is a great one if you have no type of moral code. And and he wants Mom Mothma to meet with this crime lord or something. That's what it sounds like. She called him a thug. So I guess this is a person that has amassed wealth in illegal ways. And what do people who have a lot of money from illegal things know how to do? They know how to hide it. So Mom's friend brings her to this guy, and of course she doesn't like it. She's the type of person that wants to do everything the right way, and she doesn't want help from any kind of criminal. And then the old guy, Olaf, is getting even worse. Like he's clearly on his way out. Like this guy is dying, and he ends up dying for real. He has a stroke, and of course nobody in this jail is getting medical attention. So if you get hurt in there, it looks like that's it for you. So the guy has a stroke, and they call a doctor. The doctor informs him that he has a stroke, and there's really nothing he could do about it. So he just gives him a shot to kill him real quick. And once again, tragedy because he literally got worked to death, and he only had just over a month left to be in jail. So he was so close to getting out, and then he ended up dying. And then, but this is, and then the doctor finally tells Cassian and Kino what happened on level two. So the big reveal is that somebody was supposed to get released, and then they actually put him on another level in the same jail. So now the inmates are realized. So now they realize, man, they could just do whatever they want with you. Even when you're supposed to get out, they can just put you back in jail in another spot. And of course, everybody's gonna find out. I mean, the first thing you're gonna do if you get put back in jail is tell everybody, I was just in jail and they put me back. I mean, that would be the first thing that you would tell everybody. So of course the information is going to travel, but to try to stop the information from traveling, the guards killed the entire floor. So they had, that moment when everybody's on the shock floor, they just shocked the floor, they turned it on, and then everybody's dead. But even then, everybody's going to find out because there's those moments where even though you're in a different floor, you could still see the inmates from the other floor. So the ones that are next to them are going to be like, wait, where's everybody from level two? And then when they don't come back for, multiple days, they of course are going to assume the worst. And with that and Olaf dying at the same time, we could finally see that change in Kino where he goes from being that leader that he's probably not really friends with any of the inmates, or even if he is, he's not like really friends because they can kind of look at him like he's just an extra guard at the end of the day because he's the one that's keeping everybody in line, and he's not really allowing them to talk about escaping or basically disobeying or basically going against the standard protocol at any time. So we finally see him kind of change, and you can tell that he wants to try to get out of here because people are getting released and put or supposedly getting released and put back, and people are dying and they can just kill anybody at any time. And Cassian asks him how many guards on every level, and Kino finally tells him never more than 12.